Welcome to another edition of the Tempo Storm Meta Snapshot Breakdown. There are a lot of decks in the first tier of the Snapshot, with some new additions and decks that have fallen out of favor. One thing remains constant though, and that's Druid's powerful grip on the top tiers of the meta. Summer playoffs have finished in Europe, and with 2 more regional playoffs starting in the coming weeks, it'll be interesting to see if these new events bring any new archetypes to the meta. But for now, let's jump right into the first tier of the Snapshot. The deck that's leading the tier list is the same as it has been for a while, with Malygos Druid. To no one's surprise, Malygos Druid has been tearing up the ladder consistently and is by far the most powerful deck in the game. It's fairly clear that without nerfs, Malygos Druid will remain at the top of the ladder. The deck's strength comes from how synergistic and powerful all of its cards are, as well as how strong the ramp mechanic is. With the various win conditions that are available to Malygos Druid, it makes sense that it does incredibly well on the ladder. The best matchups for Malygos Druid are Token Druid and even Warlock. The way Druid lines up against these decks is very favorable, with powerful survival and removal tools. The matchups that are problematic for Malygos Druid are ones that can easily outlast great burst damage, such as Odd Warrior or Togwaggle Druid. That being said, with the right amount of early pressure or tech cards, it's very possible to swing these into favorables. Aside from Malygos Druid, Malfurion finds himself having 2 other decks at the top of the tier list, with Togwaggle Druid and Token Druid. Zoo continues to be a powerhouse of a deck, sitting comfortably in tier 1 for another week. Being able to constantly pressure opponents while having some draws that instantly win games allows for Zoolock to remain a contender among the top decks of Standard. The list we're featuring emphasizes the archetype's burst damage potential, with Mossy Horror as a tech against Spreading Plague and Giggling Inventor. With Quest Rogue coming back into the meta, Zoo has a really good matchup to abuse, making it even more successful. In order for Zoo to do well, it needs to avoid playing against decks such as Odd Warrior, as it can easily clear boards and single minions. Another bad matchup is Token Druid, as they can stop Zoolock pressure while building threatening boards of their own. Zoo's best matchups come from decks such as Quest Rogue and Aggro Mage, as they struggle to deal with both Zoo's constant pressure and burst finishers such as Leroy and Soulfire. Death Rattle Hunter is the only form of Hunter finding itself in the top tier of this week, as Spell Hunter falls a bit lower in terms of power level. Death Rattle Hunter, on the other hand, still finds itself high up due to the pressure it can put on, in combination with Deathstalker Rexar being able to generate an infinite amount of threats. Death Rattle Hunter does very well against grindy control decks such as Odd Warrior, as Rexar can almost win the game alone. The infinite amount of pressure makes it hard for a deck whose win condition is running us out of resources to win. Other favorable matchups include Shutterwalk Shaman, as they can't really deal with the large amount of consistent pressure from our Death Rattle minions. On the other hand, decks such as Quest Rogue or aggressive decks like Zoo tend to do well against Hunter, as they can outpressure us and beat us at our own game. Lastly, to many players' dismay, Quest Rogue once again finds itself sitting in tier 1. While most thought Quest Rogue was dead, the deck seems to have found a way back into the meta 1 month into the Boomsday Expansion. With how strong it is at keeping control decks out of the game, as well as how easy it is for the deck to find a win in bad matchups, it makes sense that the deck sees many positive results on the ladder. Quest Rogue finds itself taking advantage of decks lacking in assertive win conditions, decks such as Control Warlock or Odd Warrior, but falls flat when it comes to beating hyper-aggressive decks such as Aggro Mage. That being said, the top deck from the second tier is Odd Warrior. This archetype does very well against Malygos Druid and most of the aggressive decks, which is why it's so powerful. The issue with this deck, though, is a lot of the matchups are very polarized. In terms of facing decks such as Quest Rogue, it's very hard to even come close to winning this matchup when your opponent plays it perfectly. It's honestly because of the oppressiveness of combo decks that Odd Warrior isn't any higher on the tier list. However, Odd Warrior is also very oppressive to aggro decks. Secret Mage and Zoolock struggle immensely when trying to beat the pure amount of armor game and removal that Odd Warrior has, making it a horrible matchup for them and a great deck to climb with. Among the latest tech to be seen this week is Mossy Horror, a strong addition to any deck that can justify adding it. Even decks such as Zoolock have been squeezing the card into their lists. The reasoning behind Mossy Horror is that it provides an instant answer to not only the incredibly popular Giggling Inventor, but also Spreading Plague. Both of these cards are very popular in the current meta, making Mossy Horror a very powerful inclusion. Another interesting tech card that several players are experimenting with is Blood Knight. This card is also a good answer to Giggling Inventor and thus has been played in order to help answer the influx of them on the ladder. Blood Knight typically fits faster decks such as Odd Rogue, Zoo, or Odd Paladin, more so than slower decks, as the large threat has greater synergy in tempo-oriented decks than control ones. If you're looking for a fun deck to climb with and want to counter a large part of the meta, you should consider playing Subject 9 Hunter. While the deck's overall power level is a bit weaker than Tier 1 decks, it's still a powerful deck that actually beats most of the decks leading the tier list. Subject 9 Hunter is favored against every Tier 1 deck aside from Token Druid. Due to the combination of Emerald Spellstone, Deathstalker Rexar, and just pressuring with minions, Subject 9 Hunter can definitely fight off most of these decks. That concludes this look into the Tempo Storm Meta Snapshot. Thank you for watching, and we really hope you learned more about the current state of the ladder. If you enjoyed, be sure to like the video and let us know in the comments what you thought about it. Make sure you subscribe to stay up to date with all of our Tempo Storm news and Hearthstone content. See you next time!